I stared at my phone, the wedding dress spilling across the floor like a river of silk gone sour. One message. One sentence that split my world in half. I can't walk you down the aisle. Megan's event is more important. Maybe I'll make it to the reception. The room tilted. The chandelier above buzzed like it was mocking me. My heart hammered against my ribs as if trying to escape. 17 years ago, standing at my mother's funeral, my father squeezed my trembling hand and promised, "I'll always be there for the big moments." But here I was, mascara burning my cheeks, clutching a diamond ring that suddenly felt heavier than stone, realizing promises can be lies dressed as love. My bridesmaids froze mid-motion, Jessica's mascara wand dangling in the air, Tara's lips parted in a silent "oh." Then it hit me. If he wasn't coming, who would walk me down that aisle? If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt dismissed, betrayed, or made to feel invisible, or maybe you've experienced the deepest loneliness, or that unbearable pain of losing those you love most, share it. Leave a comment, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because maybe the next story will remind you of your own strength. The bridal suite felt suddenly too small, its ivory walls closing in like a tightening fist. The ornate clock on the wall ticked with merciless precision, each second dragging me closer to a ceremony I no longer wanted to face. The room smelled of champagne and perfume, but beneath it all lingered something sour, something sharp, like betrayal itself had a scent. I gripped the vanity, knuckles whitening against the polished wood. My reflection stared back at me, a bride painted in perfection, lashes curled, lips flushed, but inside, I was 13 again, standing at my mother's casket. Back then, I'd clung to my father's hand like a lifeline. His voice, rough with grief, had promised, "We're a team now, Emily. I'll always be there." I had believed him. I wanted so desperately to believe him. But promises don't weigh anything until the day they collapse on you. And today, they crushed me. "Emily," Jessica whispered, mascara wand still suspended like a frozen pendulum. What did he say? The words wouldn't come. My throat locked tight, chest rising in shallow gasps. Tears blurred the chandelier into streaks of fractured light. I heard Tara gasp softly, felt her step closer, her voice trembling, "Emily, you're scaring us." I wanted to tell them the truth, that my father had chosen Megan, again. That his absence today wasn't just about a calendar conflict. It was about every missed recital, every empty seat in the crowd, every moment I'd convinced myself his absence had a good reason. The diamond on my finger cut into my skin as I clenched my fist, a promise about to be fulfilled while another lay shattered in shards too sharp to hold. The door burst open then, Olivia, our wedding planner, clipboard in hand, efficiency in her stride. 3 hours until lineup, ladies. She stopped, her eyes narrowing at the sight of my ruined face, the tension vibrating in the air. What's going on? I swallowed hard, forcing the words past the lump in my throat, words that tasted of betrayal. My father, he's not coming. Silence clung to the room after my confession, heavy as wet velvet. Olivia lowered her clipboard slowly, the practiced calm of a professional slipping just enough to reveal the crack beneath. Jessica's eyes darted between me and Tara, searching for something, anything, to fix what none of us could fix. Then, a vibration broke the stillness. My phone, lying face down on the carpet where it had landed, buzzed insistently. For a moment, none of us moved. It was as if the universe itself had exhaled and demanded I pick it up. Jessica bent, retrieved it carefully, and handed it to me like a fragile artifact. The name flashing across the screen made my breath hitch, Uncle David. My father's older brother. The man who'd clapped the loudest at my high school graduation, who mailed me handwritten notes during college finals, who never once forgot my birthday. My thumb trembled as I swiped to answer. Hello. Emily. His voice, warm and steady, cut through the chaos in my chest. I just spoke to your father. I don't know what to say, sweetheart. I am furious with him, but more than that, I'm heartbroken for you. A sob escaped me before I could stop it. The words tumbled out like shards. He's not coming, Uncle David. He promised me. Again. And he chose Megan. Again. I know, he said softly, the anger in his tone carefully leashed. Then, after a pause that felt like the breath before a leap, would you let me walk you down the aisle? It would be my honor, Emily. The room stilled. Jessica's lips parted. Tara pressed her hand to her mouth. Olivia straightened, hope flickering in her eyes. My heart twisted violently, half gratitude, half grief. Could I let someone else step into a space I'd spent my whole life saving for my father? Would it feel real, or would it be another reminder of the man who broke his promise? The chandelier above flickered once, then steadied, as if holding its breath with me. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, voice trembling. Uncle David, I don't know if I can. The line with Uncle David lingered in my ear long after the call ended, his offer echoing like a lifeline I was too afraid to grab. My chest still rose and fell in uneven waves when Samantha cleared her throat. It wasn't a soft sound. It was sharp, deliberate, the kind of noise you make when you're about to confess something heavy. Emily, her mascaraed lashes trembled as she held out her phone. The screen glowed in the dim bridal suite, a pale blue light that made the whole room feel colder. I frowned, confused. What is it? She hesitated, biting her lip until the color drained from it. Then she placed the phone in my hand, her voice a whisper edged with guilt. I should have told you sooner. I couldn't believe it myself. On the screen, a thread of messages scrolled upward, each one a blade. Megan, don't worry. I'll keep Dad with me on wedding day. Jessica, but he promised Emily. He wouldn't. Megan, he always does what I ask. She'll get over it. She always does. The room spun again, faster this time. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the vanity stool, the silk of my gown pooling around me like quicksand. She sent that 3 weeks ago, Samantha said, her voice breaking. She even slipped once, said it to me by mistake. Then told me to delete it. The words blurred as tears burned my eyes. Images from years past crashed over me, like waves too relentless to fight. I was 17, standing on stage at my school play, searching the audience for his face. The seat was empty. Later, I'd learned Megan had convinced him I didn't want the distraction. I was 21, waiting outside the auditorium for my scholarship award, clutching my speech with sweaty palms. He texted that morning, be there soon. But he never came. Weeks later, his assistant mentioned Megan had told him I'd rescheduled. And now, on the day I was supposed to walk into forever, she had once again stolen him away. She's been doing this for years, I whispered, the truth clawing its way out of me. My voice sounded hollow, foreign, like it belonged to someone else. And he lets her. Jessica stepped forward, tears trembling in her eyes. Emily, we didn't know how bad it was. We thought maybe it was just bad timing, coincidences. No, I snapped, surprising myself with the sharpness. My hands shook, but my words were steady. It was never coincidence. It was sabotage. Every single time. The chandelier overhead flickered again, casting fractured light across the bridal suite, scattering reflections like shards of glass. I could almost see myself in each one, 13, 17, 21, watching promises crumble. For the first time in years, something inside me shifted. Not the helpless ache of a daughter begging for scraps of attention. But something harder, sharper. I lifted my gaze from the phone, my voice low, vibrating with anger. This ends today. The air in the suite was thick, suffocating, every breath scraping down my throat like broken glass. Samantha's phone still glowed in my hand, the damning words of my sister pulsing on the screen. My bridesmaids stood frozen, their pity hanging over me like heavy drapes. Then, the door creaked open. Linda Miller, Michael's mother, stepped inside. Her pale blue dress shimmered under the chandelier, a soft halo around her silver hair. She carried herself with quiet elegance, but her eyes widened the moment she saw my face, streaked with tears and smeared makeup. "Oh, Emily," she whispered, crossing the room in graceful strides. She reached for my hands, pulling them gently into hers. Her palms were warm, steady, grounding me when the floor still felt like it might collapse. "What happened?" The words tumbled out, jagged and raw. "My father isn't coming. He chose Megan's event over me. Again." For a beat, silence held us. Then Linda exhaled slowly, her expression shifting, not to shock, not even pity, but recognition. "When I was 28, she began, her voice calm but threaded with old hurt, "my father refused to attend my wedding. He didn't approve of Gregory, my husband, because he was Jewish. I told myself he'd change his mind. I waited until the last moment, hoping he'd walk through those doors." Her eyes glistened, though her smile remained composed. "He never came. And for years after, I kept chasing his approval. Rearranging holidays, swallowing disappointment, excusing his absence at birthdays, graduations. Each time, I thought, maybe next time, he'll choose me. But all it did was hollow me out." Her words slid into me like a blade and a bomb at once. I saw myself in every syllable, waiting, hoping, bending. And breaking. "I don't understand why he keeps doing this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Why isn't my love enough?" Linda squeezed my hands tighter. "This isn't about your worth, Emily. It's about his weakness. Some people can't see what truly matters until it's gone. Don't spend your life waiting for him to wake up. You'll miss the people already here, loving you fully, without condition." The chandelier above caught the tears in her eyes, scattering them into glints of gold. For the first time all day, the crushing weight in my chest shifted, ever so slightly, replaced by something fragile but undeniable, hope. Behind me, Tara sniffled quietly. Jessica reached for a tissue, her mascara streaking her cheeks. Even Olivia, our unshakable planner, blinked rapidly. Linda brushed a thumb across my damp cheek, her voice firm now, almost commanding. "The question isn't whether your father shows up today. The question is, will you let his absence destroy your happiness?" Her words struck like thunder, reverberating through the suite. My pulse quickened. My breath steadied. The clock ticked mercilessly toward the ceremony. 3 hours until my walk down the aisle. And I knew, I had to make a choice. The suite was still humming with Linda's words when another knock rattled the door. This time it wasn't tentative. It was solid, urgent, like the rap of someone who didn't need permission to enter. Olivia glanced at me, then pulled the door open. There he was. Uncle David. Breathless, his tie slightly askew, his tuxedo jacket slung over one arm as though he'd sprinted through the streets of Manhattan to get here. His eyes found mine instantly, warm and fierce all at once. "Emily," he said, crossing the room in 3 strides. His voice cracked, but his hands were steady as he cupped my shoulders. "You look absolutely radiant. And I am so sorry you've been put through this." Tears welled again, but they weren't the hopeless kind this time. They burned hot, sharp, tears of release. "I can't replace your father," David continued, lowering his voice, "but I can promise you this, nothing will keep me from walking you down that aisle. Nothing." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. With reverence, he flipped it open. Inside lay a delicate strand of pearls, their luster soft under the chandelier's light. "These belong to your grandmother," he said. "She wore them at her wedding in 1952. I've kept them safe for decades, waiting for the right moment. And Emily, this is it." I gasped softly, fingertips hovering over the pearls. They seemed to glow with a light of their own, carrying whispers of women who had endured, who had chosen love in spite of heartbreak. Before I could speak, he produced a folded handkerchief, edges frayed with age, initials stitched in faded blue thread, MP. "Your mother gave me this before she passed," he murmured. "Said I might need it one day, for you. To remind you that she's never really gone." The room blurred. For a moment, it felt like my mother's hand was on my cheek, her voice threading through Uncle David's. The pearls shimmered like captured moonlight, the handkerchief smelled faintly of lavender, a ghost of her presence. My chest rose, steadier now. The crushing weight of betrayal hadn't disappeared, but something new filled its place, resolve. I nodded, voice trembling but certain. "Yes. Walk me down the aisle. Please." Relief spread across his face, his shoulders softening. He placed the pearls in my hands, his voice roughening. "Family shows up, Emily. That's all there is to it." Jessica and Tara exhaled in unison, as though they'd been holding their breath this whole time. Olivia dabbed at her eyes discreetly, then busied herself scribbling notes on her clipboard to mask the emotion. I touched the pearls to my throat, their coolness searing into me like a vow. The handkerchief lay across my palm, soft and steady, an anchor to my mother's love. For the first time that day, my reflection in the vanity didn't look broken. It looked ready. The chapel was empty when we stepped inside, yet it felt alive. Shafts of late afternoon sunlight pierced through the stained glass windows, splintering the air into streaks of crimson, sapphire, and gold. The colors spilled across the aisle like a mosaic path, waiting for me to walk it. My heels clicked softly against the marble, each sound too loud in the hush. Uncle David offered his arm, tentative at first, as though afraid I might recoil. I didn't. My fingers slipped into the crook of his elbow, and I was startled by the solidity there, like granite beneath fabric. For the first time that day, my knees didn't threaten to give way. "Ready?" he asked, his smile gentle, his eyes shining with both pride and sorrow. I nodded, though my heart still raced. "As ready as I'll ever be." We began to walk. Step, pause. Step, pause. The chapel swallowed each motion, magnifying the sound of my breath, the rustle of satin, the quiet creak of his polished shoes. It felt surreal, practicing the most important walk of my life in front of no one, with the man who was never meant to fill this role, yet somehow fit perfectly. Halfway down, David's voice broke the silence. "Emily, would your mother have liked Michael?" The question hit me square in the chest. I swallowed hard, eyes stinging as I lifted them to the kaleidoscope light dancing on the floor. For a heartbeat, I swore I saw her, my mother, smiling in the shimmer of colored glass. She would have adored him, I whispered. The certainty surprised me. It settled in my bones like truth that had always been there, waiting for me to claim it. David's lips curved, his eyes crinkling. "Then she's here too. In these pearls. In that handkerchief. In you." We reached the altar, and I froze, staring at the empty space where my father should have been, where he had promised to be. Pain flared, sharp and bitter, but it didn't consume me this time. David squeezed my arm, anchoring me. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "when you look back on this day, you'll remember one of two things, who wasn't here, or who was. Which memory do you want?" The words thundered in my ears, louder than the ticking clock, louder than the ache in my chest. I pressed the pearls at my throat, felt the soft linen of the handkerchief tucked into my palm, and let out a shaky breath. "I want to remember love," I said, my voice steadier than I thought possible. David's smile deepened, but before I could draw strength from it, the chapel doors creaked. Heavy footsteps echoed against the marble. The sound was neither hurried nor hesitant, it was purposeful. I turned, my breath catching in my throat. Someone had come. The garden at Central Park had been transformed into something almost unreal, like a dream stitched together with roses and sunlight. Rows of white chairs stretched out across the emerald lawn, filled with guests who rose as one when the music swelled. Petals drifted lazily in the breeze, a scatter of white and blush pink against the green. Behind the veil, my breath fogged for a moment, and I nearly forgot to move. Then I felt the firm anchor of Uncle David's arm beneath mine. He gave me the smallest nod, his eyes shining, and together we stepped forward. The first note of the wedding march rippled through the air. A murmur swept the crowd, cameras lifted, eyes turned. But I barely saw them. My gaze locked on one figure at the end of the aisle, Michael. He stood tall, his tuxedo perfectly cut, his hands trembling at his sides. When his eyes met mine, they widened, then shimmered, and a tear spilled down his cheek. Not pity. Not sorrow. Something deeper. Gratitude. Love so fierce it shook me. I gripped David's arm tighter. Each step carried the weight of history and betrayal, but also the strength of choice. The pearls at my throat gleamed against my skin, the handkerchief pressed into my palm whispering of my mother's presence. The guests blurred, their faces a watercolor wash of color. The only clarity was the aisle before me, lined with petals that seemed to float upward with every step, as though the earth itself was trying to lift me. Halfway down, David leaned closer, whispering so only I could hear. Look at him, Emily. That's your future. Don't waste today staring at your past. His words cracked something open inside me. I straightened, shoulders back, chin high, veil trembling in the breeze. And for the first time since the text, I felt like a bride. At the altar, Michael's lips moved, though I couldn't hear him over the music. But I didn't need to. I knew. I love you. You're here. That's all that matters. We reached the steps. David paused, turned me gently toward him. His eyes brimmed, his voice rough. With all the love of this family, I give you away to happiness. He placed my hand into Michael's, and the strength of their touch together nearly undid me. The officiant lifted her voice, warm and steady. Beloved friends and family, we gather today to witness the union of Emily Carter and Michael Miller. A hush fell. The garden itself seemed to lean in, holding its breath. For one perfect moment, I believed nothing could touch me. Until, from the back of the garden, a voice rang out, loud, insistent, cracking the stillness in two. Wait. The music strangled itself into silence. Every guest turned. Even the rose petals seemed to stop fluttering midair. At the back of the garden, my father, Robert Carter, stood in the archway, his suit wrinkled, tie crooked, face flushed from either the rush or the shame. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on me. For a split second, I saw something raw flicker there, hesitation, maybe regret, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Traffic, he announced loudly, voice carrying over the stunned crowd. It was brutal getting across town. Murmurs rippled through the guests, disbelieving. My grip tightened on Michael's hand until my knuckles whitened. Uncle David stiffened beside me, his jaw clenching. Before I could speak, a voice cut clean through the tension. Traffic. Cousin Daniel stepped forward from the third row, his phone already in his hand. That's what you're going with, Uncle Robert. Robert blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? Daniel swiped across the screen, holding it up so those closest could see. His voice was sharp, angry. Because according to this, while Emily was walking toward her future, Megan was throwing a party at Murphy's bar. A career celebration with 15 of her closest friends. At 4:30. Exactly when this ceremony started. Gasps burst across the crowd. Heads turned. Whispers spread like wildfire. I felt my breath slam out of me. It wasn't an elegant gala, wasn't some unmissable event, it was drinks. Cocktails and laughter while my father's absence hollowed out my chest. Robert's face blanched. That can't be right. Megan told me. But Daniel wasn't finished. He swiped again, showing another screenshot, a message from Megan to a friend. Dad will have to choose between us. Don't worry. I'll make sure he chooses me. The words stared back at all of us, venom inked in pixels. The guests gasped louder. A woman in the back muttered, "Unbelievable." My vision blurred, but this time it wasn't just tears, it was fury. Years of waiting, of excusing, of swallowing disappointment rose like a tide inside me. Dad, my voice rang louder than I expected, sharp as glass, you didn't just miss traffic. You missed me. Again. Because you let her make you choose. And you chose her. Every time. Robert stepped forward, hands half raised, his voice cracking. Emily, please, if I had known. You would have what? I snapped, my chest heaving. Shown up. Kept your promise. Been there for once in my life. The garden was silent except for my words. Even the officiant stood frozen, script limp in her hands. Robert's mouth opened, closed. Around him, faces turned, family, friends, strangers, each one a mirror of disappointment he could no longer dodge. I felt Uncle David's hand settle firmly on my shoulder, grounding me. She deserves better than excuses, he said quietly, but his words carried. Robert's shoulders sagged under the weight of all those watching eyes. For the first time, he looked small, not the towering figure whose approval I'd chased, but just a man exposed in his failures. I drew a shaky breath, forcing myself to meet his gaze. You made your choice weeks ago when you started looking for excuses. Now I'm making mine. The pearls at my throat caught the sunlight, glowing warm against my skin. I straightened, turning fully back to Michael, his eyes brimming with love and pride. Today is about us, I said, my voice steadier than my pounding heart. Not about who couldn't be here. The crowd erupted, some clapping softly, others nodding, voices rising in agreement. Behind me, I heard Robert's voice break on my name. Emily. But I didn't turn. The silence that followed my words was a living thing. It pressed against my chest, hot and suffocating, yet somehow liberating. Dozens of eyes flicked between me and my father, the space between us stretched taut like a fraying rope. Robert's lips trembled. He took a step forward, his polished shoes crunching against the path strewn with rose petals. His voice wavered, breaking like brittle glass. Emily, please. I made a mistake. I can explain. No, the word came out sharper than I intended, echoing through the garden like a gavel striking wood. Heads turned, whispers hushed. I stood taller, the pearls at my throat cool and solid, the handkerchief hidden in my palm like an anchor. You made your choice, I continued, voice steadier now. For years, you've made it. Every recital. Every graduation. Every moment I prayed you'd be there, you chose Megan. And I kept telling myself it was bad timing. That someday, you'd show up for me. Tears blurred my vision, but they didn't weaken me. They sharpened me. But you didn't. Not once. And I won't keep waiting. Not today. Not ever again. The words sliced through the garden air, final and irrevocable. I felt them cut away the invisible strings that had bound me to his approval. Strings that had kept me reaching, hoping, begging. They snapped clean. Robert froze, his face ashen, his hands shaking at his sides. The man who once seemed unshakable now looked small, diminished, almost swallowed by the murmuring crowd. Beside me, Uncle David straightened, his presence steady as stone. He leaned in just enough for me to hear, "You're free now, sweetheart. Walk forward." I inhaled deeply, chest expanding for the first time all day. Then I turned, fully, deliberately, back to Michael. His eyes shone, wide and wet, but there was pride there too, pride that I had found my voice, even if it broke me to use it. The officiant, silent until now, cleared her throat, her voice soft but firm. "Shall we continue?" "Yes," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We shall." The garden shifted. Guests leaned in, tension loosening into relief. Michael reached for my hand, and when our fingers entwined, it felt like the click of a lock finally opening. The ceremony resumed. Vows spilled from trembling lips, rings slid onto shaking fingers. Each word felt heavier because of what had come before, like stones laid into the foundation of something unshakable. When Michael whispered, "With this ring, I choose you," my knees nearly buckled, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of being chosen, finally, unequivocally. Applause erupted when we sealed it with a kiss, the kind of applause that doesn't just celebrate, it vindicates. Petals lifted in the breeze, swirling around us like confetti spun by fate itself. And yet, at the edge of the crowd, I caught him. My father, standing rigid, his face streaked with something between shame and sorrow. He didn't clap. He didn't smile. He just watched. And in that moment, I felt it, pain, yes, but also clarity. For the first time, his absence didn't hollow me. It freed me. As Michael and I turned to face the cheering guests, Uncle David just behind us, I thought, this is what family looks like. Not blood. Choice. But even as joy swelled, a shadow lingered. Because I knew the story wasn't finished. Robert was still here. Still watching. And the night was far from over. The ballroom glowed beneath a canopy of twinkle lights, soft golden threads looping from beam to beam until the ceiling resembled a starlit sky. The scent of roses and champagne mingled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, the hum of a string quartet filling the air. Hand in hand, Michael and I entered to thunderous applause, his palm warm at the small of my back. Cameras flashed, guests cheered, and for a fleeting moment, the weight of the afternoon seemed to dissolve into glitter and music. But then the DJ's voice boomed across the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the traditional father-daughter dance." The applause tapered into a hush, the kind of silence that prickles your skin. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, expectant. My stomach dropped. The absence loomed, threatening to swallow this moment. Before panic could take hold, Uncle David stepped forward. His tuxedo was slightly wrinkled from the long day, his bow tie loosened, but his expression was resolute. He extended his hand, palm steady, eyes glistening. "May I?" he asked softly. A lump rose in my throat. For a heartbeat, I thought of saying no, that this tradition belonged to my father, no matter how many times he'd let me down. But then I saw David's face, not asking for himself, but offering me something I deserved, a memory worth keeping. I placed my hand in his. Yes. The opening notes of What a Wonderful World floated into the air. We moved together across the polished floor, his steps careful, measured, solid beneath me. At first, my spine stiffened with the ache of what was missing. But with every turn, every sway, it loosened, until the music wrapped around us like a balm. "Look at you," David whispered, his voice rough. "Absolutely beautiful. Your mother would be so proud." Tears pricked my eyes, but they were softer this time, less jagged. I rested my head lightly against his shoulder. "Thank you. For everything." He gave a small laugh that cracked with emotion. "Sweetheart, this is what family does. We show up. That's all that matters." The crowd erupted in applause as the song ended. Guests dabbed their eyes, some openly sobbing. The relief and joy in their faces made the dance feel like a victory, not just mine, but ours. Yet, when I spun in the final turn, I caught sight of him. Robert. He stood at the far edge of the ballroom, near the bar, half hidden in shadow. His champagne glass hung limp in his hand, his shoulders slumped. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't clapping. He was watching, haunted, hollow. For a heartbeat, guilt stabbed me. Old habits die hard, the daughter inside me still yearned for his approval. But then Michael appeared at my side, his hands sliding into mine, his eyes steady and proud. And the yearning ebbed, replaced by something new, acceptance. As the next song swelled, Michael twirled me into his arms, his lips brushing my temple. "You okay?" he murmured. I nodded, surprising myself with the truth. Yes. Better than okay. But even as laughter and music swirled around us, I felt it, the weight of my father's gaze. Heavy. Unspoken. A reminder that the story wasn't finished. Because some ghosts don't vanish when the music starts. They linger, waiting for their chance to speak. Autumn sunlight streamed through the bay windows of Michael's parents' home, draping the dining room in golden warmth. Outside, maple leaves spiraled to the ground like tiny flames, a quiet reminder that even endings could be beautiful. A year had passed since that wedding day. A year since I'd stood in white silk, pearls at my throat, and finally cut the invisible strings binding me to my father's approval. Now, I sat at the head of the table, one hand smoothing the slight swell of my belly. A new life fluttered inside me, a heartbeat that carried both the ache of the past and the promise of the future. To Emily and Michael, Catherine, my mother-in-law, raised her glass, her smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. 1 year of marriage, and a lifetime of joy ahead. Glasses clinked. Laughter rippled around the table. Uncle David chuckled beside me, teasing Michael about his attempts to grill steaks over the summer. The air buzzed with warmth, the kind that feels like home. Then, a knock at the door. The room quieted. Michael stood to answer, and when the door swung open, my breath caught. My father. Robert stood there in a worn suit, his shoulders slouched, a weathered photo album clutched in his hands. His eyes, once sharp, commanding, looked smaller now, rimmed with regret. "Sorry I'm late," he murmured, stepping inside as if unsure he'd be welcome. "Traffic," he stopped himself, wincing at his own old excuse. His gaze landed on me. "I brought something." He opened the album, revealing photographs I'd never seen, my mother pregnant, her hand resting on her belly, her smile radiant. "I thought, maybe you'd like these. I know I wasn't there when it mattered most. But I'd like to be here now. For you. For your child." The table was silent. Even Uncle David's usual warmth didn't fill the gap. All eyes turned to me. For a moment, old anger rose, sharp and hot. A part of me wanted to slam the album shut, to remind him of the years of absence, of the wreckage left behind. But then my hand drifted to my stomach. A tiny kick pressed back. And I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. I reached out slowly, fingers brushing the worn leather cover. "One day at a time, Dad," I said softly. "That's all I can promise." His shoulders sagged, but his eyes glistened with something like hope. He nodded. "One day at a time." Uncle David cleared his throat, his voice steady. "That's more than some people ever get. Don't waste it, Robert." Dinner resumed, lighter now, the air shifting with cautious possibility. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something fragile, a seed of healing. Later, as we posed for a family photo, Michael's arm around me, Uncle David at my side, and my father standing tentatively at the edge of the circle, I felt the baby flutter again. A new generation stirring. And in that moment, clarity settled over me. Family isn't just the blood you're born to. It's the people who show up, who hold your hand when the world falls apart, who choose you over and over again. And sometimes, if they've hurt you, if they're willing to change, you can give them a second chance to show up right. I looked into the camera, pearls still gleaming at my throat, and smiled. Because this time, the picture would tell a story of love that lasted.